The Wild Duck. The first act opens with a dinner party hosted by Håkon Worrell, a wealthy merchant and industrialist. The gathering is attended by his son, Gregers Worrell, who has just returned to his father's home following a self-imposed exile. There, he learns the fate of a former classmate, Helmar Eikdal. Helmar married Gina, a young servant in the Worrell household. The older Worrell had arranged the match by providing Helmar with a home and profession as a photographer. Gregers, whose mother died believing that Gina and Håkon had carried on an affair, becomes enraged at the thought that his old friend is living a life built on a lie. The remaining 4 acts take place in Helmar Eikdal's apartments. The Eikdals initially appear to be living a life of cozy domesticity. Helmar's father makes a living doing odd copying jobs for Worrell. Helmar runs a portrait studio out of the apartment. Gina helps him run the business in addition to keeping house. They both dote on their daughter Hedvig. Gregers travels directly to their home from the party. While getting acquainted with the family, Helmar confesses that Hedvig is both his greatest joy and greatest sorrow, because she is slowly losing her eyesight. The family eagerly reveals a loft in the apartment where they keep various animals like rabbits and pigeons. Most prized is the wild duck they rescued. The duck was wounded by none other than Worrell, whose eyesight is also failing. His shot winged the duck, which dived to the bottom of the lake to drown itself by clinging to the seaweed. Worrell's dog retrieved it though, and despite its wounds from the shot and the dog's teeth, the Eikdals had nursed the duck back to good health. Gregers decides to rent the spare room in the apartment. The next day, he begins to realize that there are more lies hanging over the Eikdals than Gina's affair with his father. While talking to Hedvig, she explains that Helmar keeps her from school because of her eyesight, but he has no time to tutor her, leaving the girl to escape into imaginary worlds through pictures she sees in books. During their conversation, Gregers hears shots in the attic, and the family explains that old Eikdal entertains himself by hunting rabbits and birds in the loft, and Helmar often joins in the hunts. The activity helps old Eikdal cling to his former life as a great hunter. Helmar also speaks of his great invention, which he never specifies. It is related to photography, and he is certain that it will enable him to pay off his debts to Worrell and finally make himself and his family completely independent. In order to work on his invention, he often needs to lie down on the couch and think about it. During a lunch with Gregers and Helmar's friends Relling and Malvik, Håkon arrives to try to convince Gregers to return home. Gregers insists that he cannot return and that he will tell Helmar the truth. Håkon is certain that Helmar will not be grateful for Gregers' intervention. After he leaves, Gregers asks Helmar to accompany him on a walk, where he reveals the truth about Gina's affair with his father. Upon returning home, Helmar is aloof from his wife and daughter. He demands to handle all future photography business by himself with no help from Gina. He also demands to manage the family's finances, which Gina has traditionally done. Gina begs him to reconsider, suggesting that with all his time consumed he will not be able to work on his invention. Hedvig adds that he also will not have time to spend in the loft with the wild duck. Embittered by Gregers' news, Helmar bristles at the suggestion and confesses that he would like to wring the duck's neck. Indulging his mood, Helmar confronts Gina about her affair with Håkon. She confesses to it, but insists that she loves Helmar intensely. In the midst of the argument, Gregers returns, stunned to find that the couple are not overjoyed to be living without such a lie hanging over their heads. Mrs. Sorby arrives with a letter for Hedvig and news that she is marrying Håkon. The letter announces that Håkon is paying old Eikdal a pension of 100 crowns per month until his death. Upon his death, the allowance will be transferred to Hedvig for the remainder of her life. The news sickens Helmar even further, and it dawns on him that Hedvig may very well be Håkon's child. He cannot stand the sight of Hedvig any longer and leaves the house to drink with Malvik and Relling. Gregers tries to calm the distraught Hedvig by suggesting that she sacrifice the wild duck for her father's happiness. Hedvig is desperate to win her father's love back and agrees to have her grandfather shoot the duck in the morning. The next day, Relling arrives to tell the family that Helmar has stayed with him. He is appalled at what Gregers has done, and he reveals that he long ago implanted the idea of the invention with Helmar as a life lie to keep him from giving in to despair. The pair argue as Helmar returns to gather his materials to work on the invention. He is overwhelmed by the number of details involved in moving out of the apartment. Hedvig is overjoyed to see him, but Helmar demands to be free from intruders while he thinks about his next move. Crushed, Hedvig remembers the wild duck and goes to the loft with a pistol. After hearing a shot, the family assumes old Ekel is hunting in the loft, but Gregers knows he has shot the wild duck for Hedvig. He explains the sacrifice to Helmar, who is deeply touched. When old Ekel emerges from his room, the family realizes he could not have fired the gun in the loft. They rush in to see Hedvig lying on the ground. No one can find a wound, and Relling has to examine the girl. He finds that the shot has penetrated her breastbone and she died immediately. Given the powder burns on her shirt, he determines that she shot herself. Helmar begs for her to live again so that she can see how much he loves her. The play ends with Relling and Gregers arguing again. Gregers insists that Hedvig did not die in vain, because her suicide unleashed a greatness within Helmar. Relling sneers at the notion, and insists that Helmar will be a drunk within a year.